Bad news if you're a China-loving liberal, because the Trump administration right now is making a giant trade deal that is going to reshift the balance of power and economic influence across the entire world, likely for decades to come. And I'm going to go into the details of this new trade deal that's happening right now on American Advocates. It's not an unpopular take to say that America is far too dependent on China. 30% of our total technologies and 20% of total pharmaceuticals come from China. This creates the possibility of a national security nightmare. And why is that? Because China hates us, of course. And it's time we all admitted that. Not only is China not our friend or ally, but they are quite open, in fact, that their goal is to usurp our American economy, become the #1 economy in the world, and then remove Western influence and culture from the face of the planet, whatever that means. And with all of that in mind, I honest to God cannot understand why we decide to rely on them for anything, really. But Trump seems to think the same way, thankfully, and now huge changes are coming. Yesterday, Vice President JD Vance was spotted in New Delhi, India. He is now negotiating what will likely be a historic and earth-shattering new trade deal with India's leader, Prime Minister Modi. And I'm just going to say it like this: China is screwed. Because India, unlike China, has always been mostly friendly towards us. Our American soldiers have trained alongside Indian soldiers for years now. And most importantly, when it comes to India, they've had the potential to be America's #1 producer and foreign manufacturer for years. India is currently leading the world in the fastest growing economy. Their GDP grew by 6.7% last year alone. Meanwhile, China claims that their GDP grew 5% last year, but the reality is, according to all independent and reliable sources, China's GDP, in truth, only grew by about 2.4%. So India is essentially growing 3 times faster economically than China is. And this makes sense because last year, America was also India's #1 customer when it came to buying imports from them. The path Trump appears to be taking us on is a path where we are going to straight up replace China with India when it comes to our foreign manufacturing. And I love this. Currently, Trump is still tariffing China at a rate of 145% on the bulk of their Chinese goods here. And this is crushing their economy. To make matters worse, China's economy has already been struggling even before this trade war with Trump. China has a current youth unemployment rate of 15.3% at conservative estimates. To make matters worse, Chinese properties are collapsing under a housing market crisis that is equivalent to the one that America went through back in 2008. It's a disaster. China's properties on average are down in value by 30% overall in all of their major cities. And then along comes Trump, who gets elected as president and just decides, rightfully so, that our trade practices with China have been unfair for too long now, and we're going to start a trade and tariff war. This is the last thing China needed, especially because now during this trade and tariff war, many of their factories are shutting down, causing more job losses and a further economic decline. And I think one of the reasons why liberals love China so much isn't simply just because they hate Trump and want him to fail at everything, causing them to side with people and countries that are inherently against America. But I think another key factor into liberals' love for China is that China is treating this with the same blind hatred that liberals treat Trump, because their blind hatred has caused the collective egos of China's leaders to remain too stubborn to play the trade war correctly. And Trump even stated this on social media, essentially saying China is playing the trade war wrong. They're making the wrong moves. And they are, because tariffs will hurt China way more than they'll hurt America. I think for the most part, most American citizens haven't even really noticed that there's a trade tariff war going on right now.
I don't think that you're going to see a big effect on the consumer in the U.S.
But Chinese citizens certainly have. And despite the risk of civil unrest and further economic decline, China cannot bring themselves to accept defeat early on and minimize the damage. So instead, they're literally playing tariff chicken with Trump, hurting themselves even more. And what happens when you hurt yourself in water? Well, it's a blood in the water effect, and that's essentially what's happening across the world. You see, other world leaders are like sharks, waiting for their opportunity to strike, and rightfully so. And with China continuing to hurt themselves, world leaders are now rising up and taking advantage. Countries like Vietnam, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and now most notably India are moving in on China's territory and taking advantage of their weakness and mistakes. Specifically with India, we don't know for sure yet all of the details of the trade deal being worked out yet, but what we do know is that Prime Minister Modi himself has expressed a strong desire to get the deal finalized as quick as possible. And the rumored details of the trade deal are amazing terms for both India and America.
And on that note, I want to talk about a few areas of collaboration today, how India and the United States can work together. First, perhaps most importantly, to protect our nations. Second, to build great things. And finally, to innovate the cutting-edge technologies both our countries will need in the years to come.
It appears America plans to double our bilateral trade with India by the year 2030. We will likely be moving close to $80 billion of production from China to India, resulting in India's exports to America likely hitting $250 billion by the year 2030. And this is going to cause a positive chain effect in India, resulting in the creation of up to 15 million new jobs for Indian citizens, transforming India into the world's new top factory. But this trade deal doesn't just benefit India. Of course, it's a deal that's going to benefit America too, because America's exports are close to $80 billion to India. And if these rumored 0-for-0 tariffs are implemented between India and America, America's exports to India could increase up to $180 or even $200 billion by the year 2030. We already export key things that India needs, like crude oil, petroleum products, aircraft parts, and liquid natural gas. 0-for-0 tariffs would cause our exports to increase because we would take advantage of this great trade deal, and that would cause the supply and demand to increase, resulting in a greater need for output here in America, creating likely up to 750,000 new jobs for American workers. And liberals love to jump the gun and try to discredit the kind of jobs that this would create because they can't stand watching Trump succeed at all. So they love to shout that these are minimum wage factory jobs that will require you to work 60 hours a week and make $7.50 an hour. But that can't be further from the truth, because these are high wage jobs that would be created in fields like aerospace, technology, and energy. These are not low-paying jobs. And when it comes to these fields as well, especially fields like technology and aerospace, India is also guaranteeing something that China never did: intellectual property protection. And this is a gripe that many countries and a lot of American business leaders have with China. We go there to produce at a cheaper and more cost-effective rate. But the unfortunate reality of it is, in order to do so, you have to teach them how to produce your product. And what happens there, they wind up stealing your intellectual property, producing an equivalent product for their people, and then selling it, and there's nothing you can do about it because, of course, the Chinese legal system is not going to take the side of a foreign businessman over their own country. This happens quite often. Kevin O'Leary, most notably, speaking out against this recently.
China, as soon as it gets to 5 million in sales domestically, the same factories that are making it there knock it off and sell it at a 40% discount because they never have to recoup the R&D that the company put into making the product in the first place, and they get wiped out a different way. They get wiped out by China, not even, they just totally ignore the IP, and they can't go back and litigate. The crazy thing, Megan, is Chinese companies use the American legal system to sue American companies after they've knocked them off.
But see what happens when we actually decide to move our production to a country that actually likes us, India. They're guaranteeing the intellectual property production. They want to do business with America. It's speculated for now, but they're very likely going to offer us 0-for-0 tariff deals, welcoming our exports just as much as we welcome theirs. This is a deal that is going to have serious implications on the rest of the world. And it all boils down to giant mistakes that China continues to make. China has played this entire trade war wrong.
CCP responded by saying it's ready to fight to the end.
Rather than admitting to unfair trade deals and practices with America, renegotiate new and fair trade deals with us, their number one customer essentially, they have tried to grandstand against America on the world stage, and it's costing them dearly. The moral of the story here is that a good name is more desirable than great riches, for a reason. China's 30-year-long practice of unfair trade policy and IP stealing ways has now caused other countries to turn their backs on them at the first sign of trouble. Trump is now leading a makeshift trade coalition against China, all while tariffing them into oblivion, bringing home many American companies back to America to produce and create new jobs here and benefit our economy, and moving many more of them out of China and possibly into India, helping our ally India and hurting our enemy China in the process. And they said that the Trump tariffs were stupid, but all I keep seeing here is win after win after win, resulting in the very people who are calling Trump stupid looking stupid themselves.